Hello everyone and welcome again. So this is the preview of the last file that we set up together. And you can see the ground is falling, I'm getting all these nice fracturing, separation. The tearing feels very natural, it feels large, and it's working the way I wanted it to be. Except there was one behavior that we're not getting, which is the collapse. Right now it's not following what's underneath no matter what the weight is. And the reason for that is the pin constraint. And what we need to use instead is the soft constraint. The main difference is when we use the pin constraint, let's say we have three pieces, it's creating a link between the neighboring faces and creating a point there. So these two guys will be allowed to rotate this way. These two pieces will be allowed to rotate this way. And this is the center, the pivot that they will have. Now, because the pieces are thick, they're not going to have a huge amount of freedom to do that. What we need instead is to allow them to separate a bit. Otherwise, they will never fall. If we're going to have, a lot of pieces connected together and held up with only the rotation as a constraint, they're not allowed to separate from each other. They will never fall apart. Unless we add a huge amount of geometry to give them a chance of having more freedom to move. So what we need instead is we need to use a soft constraint. The soft constraint is going to allow the geometry to separate, but still holds them up. They're not going to separate in a random way. They're going to still be connected, and the constraint will try to hold them back. It will give us the behavior of the pin constraint that we want, but it will always give them a chance to separate, and that's what we're missing. If this center here had a chance to separate, it will fall and follow the surface underneath it nicely, and we'll also get the tearing apart that we want. So what I've done is I've went ahead and made a few changes in the sim. I turned on the underneath surface just to make sure that we have everything we need for the final sim, and I swapped the hard constraint with a soft constraint, and I'm going to show the hip file in a second. I want to show a preview first of what it looks like in after the sim. So this is everything. I included the geometry, as I said. I moved the underneath layer so it doesn't intersect with everything, and I swapped the pin with a soft, and you can see right away that it falls. And it's not the reason it falls is because we're allowing it to separate. We're allowing it to get away from each other. The pieces are somewhat free now, but they're still held up together. And after this, we're getting this nice tearing. Same thing here. It's all natural. And what we could do is we could play with the constraint settings, the springiness, the softness. If we want them to hold up together, they could do that. If we want to play and try different wedges, you're more than welcome to do that. For me, I got this to work, and this is the final sim that I used. I didn't spend too much time tweaking because I knew it's going to be covered with smoke, and the main thing that I'm looking for is that ripple, and it's there. So this is the part I'm looking for. After it hits, see that this collapse, boom, and then everything jumps off, and that's the main effect I'm looking for. Okay, so let's see what I've done. And here we had it before. This is what we had before. I only changed the hard to soft constraint, which will trigger this UI and set the properties that we need. And then this is our node. Everything is the same except for the breaking rules here. We're no longer using the hard, now we're going to use the soft. I changed the rest length to 0 because that's what the length is. And then the break-in threshold, I changed this name from hard to soft, and I kept everything the same. Now, the options we could try is increase the stiffness, increase the dampening, and increase the angular stiffness. Maybe if we wanted to add plasticity, this is for metal deformation. It requires a lot of subsamples to get the result that we want, especially with fast moving objects. So I don't need it in this example. I need a large, massive surface, and that's it. I disable this node and then I disable the transform, so everything is working together, and this is the final result. And with this idea, you will be able to get nice clustering and all that. Now, if we wanted to take it further and say, okay, I don't like the way these pieces are separating, what we could do is we could add another glue constraint or another soft constraint with a stronger resistance, and only keep it to cluster certain pieces. We delete the neighboring parts. I'm gonna quickly show how we could do this. So let's say we have this constraint. I'm going to use a glue cluster node, and I'm going to increase the size. So let's say that these are my clusters. I want to make sure that certain blocks are more compact. They can stay together, and we could do that. So I'm going to use a blast. With this node, once you set it, it will set two attributes. One strength attribute in the cluster, and one attribute where the neighboring clusters are different. So these primitives, they have the same value in these 2 points, but this, for example, have different values here and here. So we're gonna find that and delete it, and this way it will give us the inside clusters only. So I'm gonna say strength equal -1, and that's the in between neighbors. I'm gonna say delete non-selected, and that's my clusters. And we could add this, let's say this is, I'm going to set it as a hard constraint. Okay. And we could also use a constraint force mix, and this will make it softer. It's not going to allow it to move or anything, but it's going to make it softer. And let's reduce the size. Okay. And then we can do, we can add a little bit of noise to break these edges if we wanted to. So let's do that. I'm going to use a rest node here. I'm going to use a noise node. And center it, and then let's increase the noise. And you can see the clusters are separating, and then I'm going to restore, sorry, the edges are getting broken, and let's restore the position. So with and without, you can see we're getting more broken up edges, and you can add these clusters to hold groups of pieces together. If you don't like to see these cracks all over the place, you can definitely do that. And that's pretty much it for the sim. The next part, we're going to add the spaceship, which will interact with the geometry from underneath and push everything. But so far, I'm pretty happy with this. I get everything that I need. You can see it's still pushing here. Stuff underneath it is still moving, and all that is rippling towards the surface, and it feels very, very natural, and it's gonna work really well with the spaceship rising. So that's pretty much it. See you guys in the next video. Bye bye.